You're going to go ahead and fill them in there at the top. It says equations to remember on your paper. This is what you're going to highlight after you write them in. The first one is the slope formula. The slope formula is y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. Do you want to scoot up here since he's not here? James, you could also move if you need to. This second one, you actually haven't learned yet, or you have in Algebra 1. We haven't gone over it yet in geometry, but this is the time to do that. This is called the point-slope formula. So what do you think are the two things that are in the point-slope formula? A point and then a slope. So good. The formula looks like this. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And I'll explain it. It goes on the second line. Do you see these lines? All right, so the points that you're going to plug in, you'll actually end up plugging it in here. You see where I wrote in yellow? You'll plug in the x and the y. And then where are you going to plug in the slope? What letter represents slope? Yeah. The m. Good. So we'll go over that today more. The last thing we go over is the slope-intercept formula, which is y equals mx plus b. All right, so again, which one represents the slope? The m. And then which one represents the intercept? B. Okay. So there's that. Before we begin this lesson, truly, we're going to have to be able to multiply fractions. So we're just going to review this. There is really one simple way to do it, and it's to multiply straight across. So 1 times 5 is 5. And then you do the same thing with the bottom. 2 times 4 is 8. Does that reduce?
No.
No, so that's it.
And which one is this one? Or did you?
We're just multiplying right now. So basically later on you're going to be plugging in slopes, and you know some slopes are fractions. So this is just to refresh our memory on how to multiply a fraction. That's all. The next one we have 1/4 times 8. So what is every number invisibly over? 1. So we still multiply straight across, even though it looks kind of crooked. So we do 1 times 8, which is 8. And then 4 times 1, which is 4. Does this reduce? It does to 2. And that's it. All right, and then the last one, 10 times 11 is 110. And then 3 times 6, 18. Does this reduce? They're both even. So what are they? Are they both at least divisible by? 2. What's 55 divided by 2? Sorry. What's 110 divided by 2? 55. I'll be. What's 18 divided by 2? 9. Can they reduce any further? They cannot. So that's it. So in math, you reduce if you can reduce. So especially with slopes. All right, so that being said, we lead to what we'll be doing today. We're going to be writing an equation of a line. These are the 3 steps. If you look, it says 3 steps to write an equation of a line or something to that extent. First step is to find the slope. So you'll fill that in for step 1. Find the slope. Step 2, plug into the slope-intercept form. So this is the one that you just wrote in we're going to talk about. And then rewrite into slope-intercept form. So again, what does slope-intercept form look like? Good, y equals mx plus b. So that's what your final answer will look like. Y equals mx plus b. All right, so step 1 is to find the slope. Is that going to be difficult in this problem? No, why not? It says the slope. So what is the slope? 2. So we've done step 1. The slope is 2. Then we're going to need to plug into the point slope formula. So go ahead and write that down. If you see in my asterisk, I say I want you to write the point slope formula for each of these problems. This will help you memorize it, so you will not have to write it every time, eventually. So go ahead and write y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So what I've written in black is not going to change. So you're not going to plug in anything here or here. But what we are going to plug in is y1. We'll start with that. So that means the y of the coordinate they gave us. So what is the y they gave us? 6. So we're going to plug in 6. We'll plug in our slope, which they said was 2. And then we'll plug in the x of the coordinate they gave us, which is 4. All right, so from here we just want it to look like y equals mx plus b. So in order to do that, we need to get y by itself. In order to do that, we need to distribute on the right side. So the left will stay the same. The right will distribute. What's 2 times x?
2x.
And then 2 times negative 4? Good. And then our last step to get y by itself? Add 6. So where will I add 6? Will I add it to the 2x or add it to the negative 8?
Negative
To the negative 8. Good. So we'll have y equals 2x. What do we think? Minus 2. Good. So I'm just going to show you on the graph what this looks like. We want it to go through the point 4, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 6. So here's the point we want it to go through. To graph, you start with the y-intercept. What is the y-intercept here? Look at our formula. Negative 2 is your y-intercept. So negative 2. And then what is my slope?
2.
It is 2. So what is that as a fraction? 2 over 1. So I'm going to go up 1, 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. So did I hit the spot or hit the point I needed to? I did. Okay. So this is just a visual of what you did. You named this line. It contains the point 4, 6, and it has a slope of 2. Okay. We're going to do the next one. It's the same 3 steps. I already have the points graphed for us. The first step is to find the slope. So here we aren't given the slope, but we do know how to find the slope. How do we find the slope between 2 points? By using the slope formula. Good. The y1 minus y2. This is to find the slope over x1 minus x2. So we're on this problem now. All right, so what's my first y? 8. All right, and then my second y? 2. My first x? Negative 7. And then my second x? Negative 14. Good. When I plug in that negative 14, what happens? Becomes a positive. Good. All right, so then we just simplify. 8 minus 2 is 6. And then minus 7 plus 14 is 7. So this is my slope. Okay. So step 1, done. We found our slope. From here, we're going to plug in to the point slope formula. So I'm going to shrink this a little bit. So we got y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So at this point, you actually need to choose. We have 2 points. You need to choose 1 point to plug into the formula. It doesn't matter which one you use. I usually pick the one with smaller numbers, or it just depends on what you want to go for. So which one do we want to use, the first coordinate or the second? Sure. So we're using this coordinate. So that means what is the y I'm going to plug in? 8. All right, and then we said my slope was 6 over 7. And then what is the x I'm going to plug in? Negative 7. So when I plug that in, that will become positive. So on the left, we have y minus 8. On the right, we have 6 over 7x. And then we're going to go off to the side. Let's see where I'll write. I'm going to write down here. I am recording, that's why I'm writing on here. So we're going to do 6 over 7 times 7. So that's all I did was write 6 over 7 times 7. So I need to put 7 over 1. Then you just multiply straight across. 6 times 7 is 42. And then 7 times 1 is 7. And this reduces to 6. Good. So that is what we're going to write. 6. Is it going to be positive or negative? Positive, because both the fraction and 7 were positive. All right, and then what's my last step? Add 8. So y equals 6 over 7x plus 14.
Wait, so to get 6, you multiply 6 over 7 times 7?
Times 7, yes, ma'am. All right, we can go ahead and flip. Sorry. All right, so you're going to write this anywhere you want. I don't care. I'm very sorry if you weren't done. You have 10 questions on this next quiz. These are 2 of them right here. So how many points is this worth on your quiz? 20. Just for answering 2 questions. It's a fill in the blank. So the first one is about parallel slopes. If you have 2 lines that are parallel, they could look like this, they could look like this, they could look like this, okay? If you have parallel slopes, they have the same slope. I would write it and I would highlight it. People get this wrong every year, and it is worth a lot because you can't do very much with this section without knowing this fact. Parallel lines have the same slope, so parallel slopes are the same slope. So the second one, can anybody take a guess what the second slope we're going to be talking about? Perpendicular slopes. So perpendicular slopes are opposite and reciprocal slopes. And I'll give you examples, but just go ahead and write that down first. So perpendicular slopes are opposite reciprocal slopes. So when I say opposite, that means opposite sign. Does anybody know a synonym for reciprocal? It's flip. So opposite sign, and then you'll flip them. So here's what that means. What was our last slope? 6 over 7? So the opposite reciprocal of 6 over 7. So what's the opposite of positive? Negative. And then what is the reciprocal of 6 over 7? 7 over 6. If you have negative 4, the opposite would be the opposite sign. So opposite of negative is positive. And then the reciprocal of 4 is 1 over 4. How do we get the 1? Yeah, there's an understood 1 under every number. The last one we'll talk about is negative 1. This is like a trick question, but like an easy one. What is the opposite reciprocal of negative 1? Positive 1. Okay? So, the first step, I don't have my steps written, but they're the same as what we were doing on the front. First step is to find the slope. So, we're finding an equation of a line based on the given through the points 8, negative 2. So, 8, negative 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So through this point I just drew, and parallel to the line, y equals 1/4 x plus 2. So I already graphed it for you. This is the old line. We're going to find a new line that is parallel to the red one that goes through this point. Okay, so in order to do that, we need to find the slope first. So what slope will be parallel to this current line? Yep. What do we know about parallel slopes? They're the same slope. So what's the slope of this line? 1/4. So what's the same slope as 1/4? 1/4. So that's going to be our new slope. Okay, so we found the slope. What was our next step? Plug in. Good. So you're going to plug it into your formula. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. All right, so what is the y of my first coordinate, or of my coordinate in general? -2. When I plug that in, that will turn into +2. All right, and then what slope are we using? 1/4. Because it'll be the same slope as the previous line. And then what will be my x? 8. All right, so we'll have y plus 2 equals 1/4 x. All right, and then we're going to do 1/4, so we're still distributing, 1/4 times -8. So I'm going to take that off to the side. 1/4 times -8. So whenever I'm multiplying a fraction by a whole number, what am I going to put under the -8? The 1. So what is 1 times -8? Makes -8. And then the bottom will be 4 times 1, which is 4. And this reduces to -2. So when you distribute 1/4 times -8, we get -2. All right, and then my last step is subtract 2. So we get y equals 1/4 x. This is a most common mistake. What's -2 minus 2?
-4.
It is -4. So I'm going to graph it again. Okay, of my new line, what is my y-intercept? -4. And then what is my slope? 1/4. So that means 1, 2, -4 we said? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so this is my y-intercept. It's where it crosses the y-axis. Then I'm going to go up how many if my slope is 1/4? Up 1 and over 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, up 1 and over 1, 2, 3, 4. So we landed on the point we're supposed to land on. If you connected the dots, these lines are parallel to each other. So we did good. So this is your final answer. I'm just showing you why they're parallel and how it all works out. The last graphing problem we do is through the point -5, 3. And perpendicular to the line y equals -5x plus 1. What do perpendicular lines look like? I'm not asking about their reciprocal or their slope, but what do they look like? Yes, but what do they do? What's their definition? They intersect and form 90. Good. So that's our goal. Our two lines should intersect and form 90. So we have the point -5, 3. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. So our line should go through this point, intersect the line that we were given, and make a 90-degree angle. So let's start. What's my first step? Find the slope. What is my current slope of the line they gave me? -5. So we need the perpendicular slope, which will be the opposite reciprocal. So what is the opposite reciprocal of -5? 1/5. It's okay. Yeah, 1/5. So we're going to use that and move on to the next step, which is use your formula. So what is the y of the point they gave me? 3. So I'm going to plug that in. What is my new slope? 1/5. And then the x of the coordinate they gave me. -5. When I plug that in, positive. Good. So you have y minus 3 equals 1/5 times x is 1/5 x. What's 1/5 of 5? 1. And it's positive because they're both positive. All right, and then my last step, add 3. So y equals 1/5 x plus 4. Yes, ma'am. So I'm going to show you why it works. So the y-intercept, what is the y-intercept of this line? 4. And then what is the slope? 1/5. So my y-intercept is 4, so that means 1, 2, 3, 4. My slope is 1, 5. So I go up 1 and over 5. Up 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. To get from the point that we started with, which was this one, you go up 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So does it work out? It does. It fits right in. So that means this is a line. 2. All right, so I'm going to use a corner. Every corner of a paper is 90 degrees. So I'll use that to show you how it is 90. Do we all see? So they intersect, they form 90. We did good. Questions about this one? Okay, we got 2 more to do. This is the very first problem on your classwork. 100%. It looks just like this, just different things. You're determining which of the lines are parallel and which ones are perpendicular. In order to know that, what do we need to know about these lines? Their slope. So Dalton over here is going to help me find the slope of one of the lines. So we're going to find each of them. Let's start with line A. So everyone identify line A. Mine is blue. Yours is not. Yours is black and white, obviously. Do you see how they already have points on each line? You're going to count the slope from each point. So Dalton, is A a positive or a negative slope? As it goes left to right, is it getting taller or smaller?
Positive.
Yeah, answer my question. As it goes left to right, is it getting taller or smaller?
Taller.
Taller, which means positive. All right, we're going to do rise over the run. How many do you have to rise to go from this point to this point?
1.
1. Okay, that's my rise. And then how many do I have to run?
3.
Yep, 1, 2, 3. I agree. Who's going to help me with line B? Line B. Go ahead, Amelia. Line B, we got these 2 points. Mine is red, yours is not. Is this a positive or a negative slope? Positive. How much do I have to rise? 1, and I run 1, 2. I agree. Jamar, you're going to help me with line C. So line C on my page is green. It is not on yours. Jamar, do we have a positive or a negative slope for line C? Positive. How much do I have to rise? I just didn't hear you. 1. And then how much do I have to run? 2. I agree. And then who wants to do line D? Someone over here in this row. Avery, you got this. Is line D positive or negative?
Negative.
It is negative. Good. All right, so keep in mind to everyone, they share this point, and that is fine. But this point is on D, and so is this one. So when I rise, I'm actually going to go down. What's my rise, Avery?
Negative
2. Yep, I agree. 2, and then I run 1. And then we reduce that to just a -2. Good. So from here, I take this information and determine which lines are parallel and which ones are perpendicular. What will the parallel lines have? Same slope. So let's find those first. Okay. Which ones have the same slope?
Line B and line C.
Good. So we'll say line B, how do we say is parallel to?
2.
Yeah, 2 straight lines. Line B is parallel to line C. Do we have any others that are parallel? No? Perpendicular, what will those slopes look like? They're going to be opposite and they're reciprocal. So what would be the opposite reciprocal of line A? 1/3. What's the opposite reciprocal of 1/3? -3. Do we have that as an option? No? What's the opposite reciprocal of 1/2? -2. Do we have that? We do. So that means line B is perpendicular to line D. How do we say is perpendicular to? Upside down. T. All right, and then line, we said D. Are there any others that are perpendicular? Yes, we got C. Line C is perpendicular to line D. So these three are your answers, and then this is considered your work, telling what each slope was. All right, we do one more together, and then we go off on our own. Determine whether MN and RS are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So, we have two lines. What are the names of my lines? MN and RS. I have to decide if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. What would I need to know about them to decide if they're parallel or perpendicular? Their slopes. So I need to find their slopes. So we are going to use the slope formula. Okay, y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. But then comes the question of which 2 points do you use? Well, what points would we use to find the slope of MN? M and N. Okay. And then the same thing, to find the slope of RS, we would use R and S. Okay, so we're going to find them one at a time. Let's start with MN. MN. All right, so what's my first Y? That 3. And then my second Y? 4. My first X? 0. And then my second X, which would be 2. Yes, I agree. All right, so then we just do the math. 3 minus 4 is? -1. 0 minus 2 is? -2. Can this reduce? It does. Yeah, negative over negative makes positive. So I'm going to highlight this solely for the reason to find it later so we can compare them. What do we think we do next to find out if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Find the slope of the other. So same thing, y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. So remember that we're finding the slope of RS now. Okay, so we're using these 2 points. So what's my first Y? 1. And then my second Y? 4. My first X is 2. I agree. And then my second X, 8. All right, so now we just do the math. 1 minus 4 is -3. 2 minus 8 is -6. Does this reduce? It does to positive 1/2. So then compare them. We have 1/2 and 1/2. They're the same slope. So what is my answer? We have parallel lines. So you just write the word parallel. Parallel. We are going to do an assignment. You're actually going to work with a partner. You can go ahead and take out a sheet of paper. There are 7 total problems. 6 of them are in your textbook. You do need to write down the original problem, except for number 8. You'll see why when you see number 8. And then the 7th problem, I have written here. It's find the equation of a line through this point and perpendicular to this line. So the 7th problem I just highlighted in green. You'll have to write it down. in order to have it. The reason is your textbook didn't have a pretty question. You know how we've been having fractions, and they've all been multiplying into whole numbers? Let's just say 37 over 5 was somewhere in the mix in your textbook. So you're going to take out a sheet of paper, and you're actually going to work with a partner. You both need your textbooks.